Louise Ellis was a writer, illustrator, and justice advocate who lived in Ottawa, Canada, in 1995. She was 46 years old at the time. She was a stunning woman with a wonderful sense of humor. She was regarded to be a very amiable person in addition to being feminist, creative, and clever. Both your friends and your passions were numerous. In addition to writing and art, she was very interested in Tai Chi and gardening. While attending university, she began writing her first book. She also developed an interest in illustration, creating graphics by connecting a large number of tiny dots to form an image. She also painted murals in schools while working for the children's magazine Chickadee. She would also involve the kids in the process of making these artworks. Simply adorable. She was also a freelance writer for the yearly yearbook published by Canada Post. She had also begun work on a novel about David Mitchell God and David Mitchell by 1992. God was a man who had spent 23 years in prison for a crime he had not committed after being falsely convicted of rape and murder. She was writing the novel about David Morgan and participating in this support group for him. She would so attend some of the Supreme Court meetings related to his trial in an effort to establish his innocence, gather information, and so forth. And this guy who spoke up at one of the Supreme Court hearings in 1992 was present when she was there. Brett Morgan was his name. On behalf of David Mitchell God, he essentially ratted out his cellmate, Larry Fisher, claiming that the latter had admitted to killing a woman for whom another was serving a prison sentence. Louise was rather interested in that. She was proud of him for coming forward, supporting David, and taking a chance on being labeled a snitch in the process. Louise asked to speak with Brett briefly as he was being led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. She just informed him that she found his actions to be really brave and admirable, and they began exchanging letters while inside. She began writing to him while he was incarcerated, and over the course of the following 2 years, they were romantically involved. Louise started assisting him in his efforts to be freed from prison early so that they might begin a life together, even while they kept writing to each other. Even though they were physically close, they were extremely different individuals. Louise, it was said about her that she was this sharp, educated woman. In contrast, Brett was characterized as a blue-collar man. His life was difficult. He had grown up experiencing physical abuse and had developed a heroin addiction. Furthermore, he was incarcerated for fatally strangling a prostitute in Edmonton in 1978 while under the influence of drugs. Furthermore, he had solely faced manslaughter charges. Despite being given a 10-year sentence, he only spent 8 years behind bars because, as I mentioned before, Louise had hired skilled attorneys to secure his release 2 years ahead of schedule. Consequently, he moved in with Louise as soon as he was freed in 1994. They kept dating, and she was a major factor in helping him get back on his feet. She got him a pickup truck. In order to help him launch his new venture, she purchased business equipment for him. She went above and above for him, and then she vanished 9 months later. Thus, on Saturday, April 22, 1995, at approximately 1:15 p.m., Louise departed Ottawa and traveled the 15 to 20 minutes to the Gatineau Hills in Quebec. She was traveling there to see her ex-boyfriend John, as well as his daughter. Their connection was sporadic at best. However, they ended things permanently after she started dating Brett, although they stayed incredibly close friends. Furthermore, she maintained a friendship with John's daughter, and his daughter's birthday fell on the weekend of the 22nd. Louise was supposed to come celebrate her birthday with them, but she never arrived at his cottage. Louise's companion discovered her car on the side of the road in the Gatineau Hills the following day, Sunday, April 23rd, in the afternoon, not far from John's cottage. The automobile was locked from the inside, and there were no indications of a struggle or anything of the sort. Her entire possessions remained inside the vehicle. Her overnight bag with her pajamas and a book about horses that she intended to give as a birthday present to John's daughter was thus found in the back seat. She had signed the front cover of the book. Her pocketbook, which still had her identification license and bank cards, was subsequently found on the front passenger seat. Thus, it appeared that the vehicle had been left behind. After Louise's buddy found the automobile, Brett called the police, who then called the police in addition to Brett. A few of Louise's relatives and friends showed up to look around the area where her car was. They looked through the repairs and the shrubs, but they couldn't find any sign of Louise. Brant made the decision to print Louise's picture on several posters for missing individuals. He distributed them, put them up everywhere, and spent the entire day every day going to the spot where her automobile was discovered. And all he would do was stand there, stopping each passing automobile and asking them questions. If they had noticed anything, if they knew the car, he would have shown them Louise's missing people posters. In order to spread the message, he also participated in a few media interviews. "You know, I have to take it home," he was saying. He sounded sincerely saddened by the absence and claimed to be getting more and more terrified. "But what state are you in? Fear growing stronger. Despite my past illegal activity, I would never hurt her." He was obviously very forthcoming with the police during their interrogation, given that he was a convicted killer and Louise's boyfriend. He attempted to assist them in every way he could and responded to all of their inquiries. He told them everything straight. He admitted to them that, while high on cocaine in 1978, he had killed a hooker. Since he was the one who reported Louise missing, the police gave him the benefit of the doubt and allowed me to leave prison early. He had spent the entire time looking for her. Louise had facilitated his early release from prison. She had his tools, her paper, and his truck. She had been a huge help in getting him out from prison and back on his feet. Thus, he genuinely had no motive to murder her. Additionally, officers were exercising caution because they frequently face criticism for having tunnel vision in situations like these. As of yet, they possessed no evidence against him. Nothing suggested that he had murdered Louise. They therefore desired to carry out more research and consider alternative options. While the police investigation is still ongoing, Marie Perron, a woman, has been keeping a close eye on this case and has been following it in the media. She had relocated to Canada from Scotland 2 years earlier to pursue her dream of assisting women by becoming a private investigator. She felt strongly about that. While this whole case is being played out, she is actually looking to gain some experience as an API, get out there and work on her first case after completing her training for the previous few years. She also lived in Gardner, so she was about 25 minutes away from the location where Louise's car was found. She saw Brett's interviews and felt terrible for him. She called Brett and managed to get through to him, telling him she wanted to help him find the answers. "Great, let's meet tomorrow," he replied. Upon arriving at his residence the following day, she is greeted by him, who sits her down, holds her hand, and expresses his gratitude for her assistance in finding Louise. She then queries her memory for the remainder of the talk. "Naturally, no issue," he replies. He continues by telling her more about Louise in the case. "She's all I have," he says. "I'm unable to give up. We are soulmates, so I have to find her. I am not alone in this. I would be lost without her." Maureen assures him that everything will be all right and that they will locate her. "I'll assist you in locating Louise. Like I'm sure everyone else, my hope is that we recover Louise unharmed." "Indeed. I am unable to keep up. You know I can't. Really, all I have in life is her, both difficult and isolating." Thus, she proceeds and initiates independent research. She then travels to the location where Louise's automobile was discovered, kind of at the end of a driveway leading up to a cottage, along with her Jeep. Additionally, since no one was home, no one could communicate with the occupants of that cottage. It was the end of April. Many of these bungalows remained deserted throughout the winter months. The Jeep that Louise was driving was essentially dragged into this location. In fact, the Jeep was perfectly parked, drawn right up to the brink. Mary did nothing more than glance at the car's location. As she continued to examine it and the surrounding area, she began to suspect that someone other than Louise had parked the car there, purposefully locked it, and then driven off, either to confuse the authorities or to simply get rid of the vehicle after kidnapping Louise. And she thought that this had to be someone Louise knew well. It wasn't arbitrary and it wasn't unfamiliar. That someone was a part of her existence. In an attempt to identify someone in Louise's life who might have had a reason to wish to kill her, she speaks with Brett once more. At that point, Brett admits to her that he has feelings for her ex-boyfriend John, but not quite. The day she vanished, she was on her way to see him, and thus he appeared somewhat dubious. He revealed to Marie that John and Louise had actually had a pretty violent relationship during their time together, and that he probably did not like it when Louise moved on and started seeing Brett. She had been planning to see him the day before she vanished, which was another attractive source. Mary began to suspect that John might be involved in her absence, and he had the chance and the motivation to do so. Furthermore, the cops are unaware of Marie. She is unknown to them. They are unaware that she is working with a private investigator to look into the matter. However, they share her idea. They believe that John appears somewhat strange. After speaking with Brett, they learned that, on the day she vanished, she was en route to see her ex-boyfriend John, and that her car was discovered quite near to his cottage. Thus, it just seems a little strange. They go to John's place of employment and ask him some questions since they want to go talk to him. They have an alibi from him. His daughter and he spent the entire weekend at his cottage, which serves as his alibi. It's hardly much of an alibi, especially in light of the fact that her automobile was discovered not far from his cottage. Thus, the police make the decision to search the area around his cabin, but they come up empty-handed. Nothing, not even a hint of Louise. Thus, there is not a shred of evidence linking him to the disappearance. Thus, Larry Fisher is the next person the police choose to investigate. As you may recall, Larry Fisher is the one that Brett came forward with, claiming that he was the real culprit behind the rape and murder of David Mitchell, God for which he had been falsely condemned. Thus, Larry is undoubtedly a violent man. He has acted violently toward females. In the trial, Brett exposed him for having previously sexually assaulted and murdered a woman. However, Larry wasn't detained for the offense until 1997. Thus, he was not incarcerated when Louise vanished in 1995. Furthermore, he would have been furious with Brett for betraying him. According to the police's view, Larry may have kidnapped Louise and maybe killed her in retaliation for Brett's testimony against him. He has threatened me in the past. Thus, they investigate Larry's whereabouts on April 22nd, the day Louise vanished. And around 6:10 a.m., they discover that he was virtually eliminated when he was pulled over during a road stop in Saskatchewan. Detectives must now start over from scratch. When they begin investigating Brett once again, they discover that he truly owes Louise more than $20,000. I assume that this amount is for the truck and company supplies, which she must have lent him in order to help him get started rather than simply purchasing the equipment. She was also really anxious about this money. I suppose he had promised her he would reimburse her at some point in the near future. She had been phoning the bank 4 or 5 times a day asking, "Hey, has the money cleared or has he made the payment yet? Has the funding been received?" He never paid her, thus it's clear that it never happened. Additionally, they discovered that Brett had been using a fake signature on checks that he would make from Louise to himself, thereby robbing her of her money. Louise was unaware that he was acting in this manner. Because she believed the bank was at fault, she would frequently call and get really angry. The bank investigated and discovered that, in fact, Brett was the one doing these transactions and using her signature to forge checks to transmit the money to himself. The police speculate that Louise learned of this and threatened to report it to either the police or his parole supervisor. He was unable to have that. 9 months ago, he had just been released from prison. He then made the decision to murder her in order to remain free, and to make matters worse, police were investigating Louise's bank transactions. And as you recall, she was said to have departed her land between 1:15 and 1:30 p.m. on April 22nd to visit the home of her former boyfriend John. In fact, Brett was the one who provided the police with that information. He informed them of her departure time and destination. It was Brett who did that. Recall that her bank card was discovered inside her locked car when it was discovered. However, when investigators examined her bank records, they discovered that around 2:53 p.m., she is purported to have taken out $280 that day. After that, the cops go and obtain the teller's CCTV film showing Brett taking that particular withdrawal. Thus, in Brett's estimation, she had departed about 1:15 p.m. Her bank card was discovered locked in her car, indicating that she had clearly taken it with her. But inexplicably, he had taken out a cash withdrawal using her card 2 hours after she vanished. He was therefore exposed as a straight-up liar in 4K. Sadly, though, that is insufficient to put him under arrest or find him guilty. In the midst of all of this, private investigator Marie Perrott makes another breakthrough. As she listens to the tape of her initial chat with Brett, she discovers that when she asks him whether Louise's driver's side looks the same as it did when Louise drove it, or whether it has been pushed back, as if driven by a guy or someone larger than Louise. Her idea at the time was, of course, that the automobile had been purposely driven by someone Louise knew in order to fake the incident and confuse the authorities. Actually, Sir Brett said, "Oh no, it's exactly the same way that I am." Then he gets going. He stops and gives himself a correction. "It's exactly the way Louise left it," he says. When they originally had the talk, she was unaware of it until she left her room. However, upon hearing it back, she said, "Oh my goodness, there's this guy that I'm trying to help and I've befriended. Is he the real issue at hand?" Brett is now the main suspect in the eyes of the police. Thus, they bug his residence. And additionally, they had CCTV installed in front of his house so they can essentially watch him. And that's when they hear him conversing with Marie Perrin, the private investigator, and they investigate her. She is a private investigator, as they discover. She's not that old. She is new to this case. They then make the decision to go talk to her, asking her, "What have you found out so far? Are you in possession of any information? Which theories do you hold?" She informs them, "I believe he killed her as it happens." They genuinely ask her to assist them. They say, "Of course he trusts you. You two have developed a friendship. You're supporting him. Thus, it's possible that you can elicit a confession from him because he trusts you. Therefore, expecting this woman to become close to a man who has already been found guilty of murder is a highly unusual scenario." They suspect that he killed both of the women again. They're now requesting that a different woman get close to him in order to persuade him to confess. It's quite fascinating. There has never been a case like this before. And Maria is all over it. She responds, "I'll do you one better and I will find the body," when they urge her to assist them in determining what happened to Louise. They so devised a scheme in which Marie would attempt to turn Brett's attempts to place the blame on Louise's ex-boyfriend, Joan, against him. Marie will so essentially comply with it, acting as though she thinks John is guilty and that he wed Louise. And that's how they plan to try to get a confession out of Brett. Essentially, he is implying to them that this is where Jean placed Louise's body, or that this is how John killed her if he assists in locating her body or in determining what happened to her. In a sense, though, he's essentially confessing through John. He claims that this is what jumped into her, but in reality, it was him. Clearly, Brett's house is bugged from the beginning. Marie visits him at home and strikes up a discussion. Everything has been documented. She essentially informs him that he has a murder conviction. How would the body be disposed of? He then begins to tell her things like, "You know how heavy holding a dead body is. It compares to toting a bag of potatoes. It is dead weight all the way." After that, he continues by telling her about other ways to murder someone and how to dispose of their body, including how he would have disposed of Louise's body in the bushes. Marie then remarks, "All right, well, perhaps we ought to go check the bushes together." "Yeah, okay, let's do it on this date," he responds. He also establishes a date. She tells the cops that he has consented to go look in the bushes and ends by saying, "My regards, we're going to go there on this date," he continued, since that's where he would bury a body. They bug her history because, well, it's obviously a very risky scenario. They don't want him to pretend to be one after checking her out for a time. They therefore set up a bug in the home so they could hear everything that happened while they were by themselves in the bushes. She is entering a very risky situation because they will be on their own in a far-off location, making it impossible for the authorities to find them. Moreover, he has a murder conviction. He's already murdered a woman. It's also thought that he killed a different woman, and now she's following him into the bushes by herself. He may easily kill her too, before the cops have a chance to reach her and save her if he has any inkling that she is collaborating with them. Now it is June 1995, and Brett and Marie are heading into the forest to find Louise's remains. It's a calm country road, but they are being followed by 2 police surveillance teams. Really, there aren't many other cars on the road, therefore they really can't follow too closely lest Brett catch them. After traveling for 1 to 1.5 hours, Brett parks in this far-off patch of shrubs. Then he and Marie went together into the underbrush. Not only that, but the cops are unable to pursue them. It's extremely quiet in the bushes. He would therefore ask, why is anyone in this random place of the woods following us if he heard the cops following them? As Marie and Brett ventured deeper into the forest, it would become increasingly shady. He seemed to be drenched with perspiration. He then turns to face Marie, telling her, I only sweat like this during sex. It's evident that searching for Louise's body is making him feel a little more attracted to her. For him, it's almost sensually satisfying. They have traveled quite a far into the forest, and it is quiet as well. Marie is beginning to feel a little uneasy. Because they are unable to penetrate the jungle, the police are far away. So that would be it if he was planning to kill her. There would be nothing the cops could do for her. Additionally, they haven't discovered much about her background because the jungle is so silent. They claimed to be doing this because they wanted to make sure she was okay, so in order to ensure her safety, they really dispatched a police helicopter to fly above them and check on her. The top concern is to ensure her safety. But that doesn't seem like the best course of action if her safety is your top priority, in my opinion. For if Brett begins to wonder even for a moment, why is that helicopter flying her over here? It's obviously trying to find someone. I have remained silent. You have to be assisting the police, right? It would be impossible for the cops to stop him from killing her. I'm not sure. It simply doesn't seem like the best course of action. And he freaked out when he spotted that helicopter, asking her, "Are you working undercover? Have you got a wire?" "No, feel free to search me," she replied. And he begins to search her before stopping and saying, "You know what? I am not going to look you up. I want to leave, even though I trust you. I've finished looking." And he was so terrified of the helicopter that he wouldn't let us search for Louise's body outside for weeks after that. Marie then devises a fresh strategy with the detectives. Since he has no money, they decide to use Louise's money as a lure to get him to confess. Since he doesn't have any money, he has been stealing office supplies from Louise's place and pawning them for cash to cover expenses and rent. Thus, they have a bank employee phone him and inform him that he is the heir to her estate. Everything is going to come to you. But until she is pronounced dead, we are unable to give it to you. And until her body is discovered to fuel things, she cannot be deemed dead. Additionally, they convince Marie to sell Brett a bill stating that John, Louise's ex-boyfriend, had taken a polygraph regarding her murder and had failed badly. He was therefore the main suspect. All John had to do now was locate Louise's body, and Brett would become dancer. It was clear he was enjoying this. Then, though, he looks at Maureen. "How do I know you're not an undercover police officer?" he asks, and he leans in toward her as he says this. She added that she would kick him back if she weren't a police officer and that she simply knew it was a test. She returned the kiss as he leaned in to kiss her. "Well, I'm so repulsed by that I have no idea how she did it. I couldn't physically do it. I would gag and throw up on him. I was unable to. I just chilled my blood to the bone. However, I succeeded. And it really did seem to calm me down." It goes without saying that the cops were also aware of this entire encounter. She continued to be plagued. Everything had been put up by them. Thus, they were aware that this occurred. They were enraged. They gave us a call right away and advised her to pretend that her daughter was calling. She goes on to say things like, "Yeah, it's okay, there's some food in the fridge and I'll be home soon." And they are saying, "Leave that now, we need to talk over the phone." She then says to Brett, "I really need to go get home to my daughter, but what is happening?" And then we're heading to look for Louise's body. "Sure, let's do it tomorrow," he responds. She then walks away. "What the heck are you doing?" the police ask her when she meets them. "That is not something you can do. There's no getting nearer to him. You can't give him the impression that you feel that way about him." For these people, visiting and witnessing the scene of a crime like that can frequently be sexual. Thus, you simply cannot predict what will occur. Should he suspect that something is wrong, he may also wish to murder you. Nevertheless, on July 7, 1995, the following day, Marie and Brett return to the bushes in search of Louise's body. They have 2 teams of surveillance following them very loosely, and Marie's purse is still bugged. So Brett is asking Marie some really strange questions while they are strolling through the bushes alone. "Is it unsettling for you to be in the bushes by yourself with a convicted murderer?" he asks Hyena. She responds that she does trust him when he asks if she does, and it's obvious that he's taking the whole thing personally. At a certain moment, he even turns to face her and warns her to be careful around the barbed wire. Straight ahead. She's wondering, how did you find out? This guy is really not subtle at all. Maybe he wasn't trying to be subtle, after all. He's obviously taking the whole thing personally. Thus, it's possible that he wishes to make insinuations that he killed Louise. After a short while of walking, Miranda asks him, "What's that over there?" as she spots something out of the corner of her eye. He responds, "It's Louise." Marie discovers that it's a tennis shoe as she approaches it more closely. Brett then appears to become almost completely engrossed. Marie is kind of freaking out because he's staring at her. She asks, "What should I do? You're aware." Here, she clearly needs to exercise extreme caution. She tells him we found her as she kind of grabs his head and just stares into his eyes. It's all right, everything is going to work out fine. We located her. And then he kind of blinks and becomes coherent again. He then approaches Louise's body and abruptly stops sobbing. He's shouting Louise's name and wailing and sobbing. In addition, the police are able to gather from Marie's past that she and Bart are very emotional and that Bart is crying. It's simply a really intense moment. Yes, I am aware. Marie must have been going through a very emotional moment because, just a moment before, she realized that she was going to die because of the way he was staring at her. However, she simply had the right words to say at the right moment in the right way. Simply put, it would have been a huge relief. However, they have also recently found the body of this defenseless victim of his murder. She would undoubtedly be ecstatic as well, having had to spend months getting intimate with a convicted murderer. It would be insanely relieving to know that you would never have to speak with this individual again. In addition, you would simply feel relieved because you would think, well, at least it's over now. At last, I'm secure. As a result, the cops hold off on arresting him. They go before Marie and Brett emerge from the bushes and go their separate ways. Later that afternoon, Brett reports that he has discovered Louise's body to the police station, believing that John, Louise's ex-boyfriend, will be held accountable. Everything will eventually come back to him. However, Brett ends up in jail. Marie is also questioned by detectives. When they ask whether she has a message for Brett, she replies, "Tell Brett, how does it feel when a woman subdues you?" Thus, it is clear that Brett was put on trial for Louise Ellis's murder, and he made no admissions. He continued to act innocently. Louise's diary, in which she detailed Brett's severe abuse of her during their relationship, was discovered by the police. According to police theory, Louise was getting ready to leave the house on April 22nd when Brett entered the bathroom and strangled her. He then wrapped Louise's body in the shower curtain, put her body in the back of her own car, and drove her out to the bushes where he dumped her body. Furthermore, he made no attempt to hide her. All he did was cover her body with a few branches and twigs. Following this, they think he took her car to what he thought was John, Louise's ex-boyfriend's cottage, and parked it out front. However, he had indeed left his pocket at the incorrect cottage. Thus, he had not parked it in front of John's cottage. However, they think he killed her and left her car in front of what he believed to be John's cottage in order to frame her 1997 murder by her ex-boyfriend John. Brett Morgan received a life sentence after being found guilty of first-degree murder. After 25 years, he would have been eligible for parole. However, he passed away in prison from hepatitis C 2 months after being sentenced. In addition, they think he might have been behind the unsolved killings of 2 other women,